Great,
So,
looks great.
okay, so you are able to see my full screen?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. I am Dinesh Thakur. So I am researcher at Department of Population Ecology at Institute of Botany of the Czech Academy of Sciences. So I am also working on the same species as Sayantika said. So I am going to talk on growth dynamics of rhododendron anthropogon across climatic gradients. So as Sayantika has already told you about rhododendron anthropogon, but I will also show a few images and say something about the species. So as she said, this is evergreen dwarf-shrubs. Here I am showing you one of the habitats. So it is around 4,100 meter above sea level. And here we can show that the rhododendron anthropogon, it is blooming just after the snow melt. And one important thing about rhododendron anthropogon is also that it is one of these woody species which is occurring at highest elevations in the western Himalayas. So it is forming the climatic shrub lines, which makes it even more interesting species to see how climate change is affecting rhododendrons. And it is also the dominant component of this alpine vegetation. So here is one more closer image. Here even more closer, so we can see it flowering and it fruiting. So if we talk about its distribution, so it is distributed in the whole Himalaya. So in terms of elevational gradient, it occurs from 3,000 to 5,000 meter. So it provides us a very nice gradient of temperature, and it also occurs along gradient of water availability. So eastern part of Himalaya, it is bit moist with higher precipitation. The western is bit drier, and even in the eastern or in the western, there are multiple folds of mountains. And when we are in the outermost folds, so they are generally wet. Where we go one or two folds behind, so they are generally dry. But this is not in the all the folds, but it is occurring in some range of this precipitation gradient also. So in two or three folds, so we have nice water availability gradient also in its population. And thus, this combination of temperature availability and the water availability gradient makes it a nice species to study how climate change is affecting its growth and functioning. So it is as it is important alpine species. So when we are studying this species, so we can get information how the whole this alpine ecosystem are going to be changed, because this is one of the key species there. And the focus in this study is around three interconnected aspects. The first one is the lifespan of this species, which is fundamental not just for its individual survival and reproduction, but it also has broader ecosystem functions like carbon storage and nutrient recycling. When plants are staying for longer, so they are storing carbon for longer time. So the second aspect is annual growth changes, which help us to detect how populations are responding to climate change and natural climatic variability. And we can also tell if the growth is declining or increasing in the this recent past where we are seeing this climate change. The third aspect is climate growth relationships, which are important to pinpoint which environmental factor like temperature or precipitation or any other factor are driving these growth changes, and which populations are more sensitive or showing decline in growth or increase. So considering these aspects, the questions which are addressed in this study, the first one is how plant age differs among populations distributed along climatic gradients of temperature and water availability. And here the expectation is that there will be longer lifespan in the plants which are in colder and drier sites due to their slower growth rate. And the second question is how plant growth differed among populations and how it changed during past decades across populations. So here the expectation is that uh, there will be greater growth in populations which are in warmer and wetter climates, and also there will be enhanced growth in colder and wetter regions, while there will be reduced growth in warmer and drier areas over the last decades. The third question we address is which climatic factors stimulate plant growth or which restrict its growth. So here we expect that increase in temperature will stimulate growth in colder climates, while decreased precipitation in warmer and dry climates will lead to reduced growth. So this study uses only 3 regions from the 5 which Sayantika mentioned because of our ability to analyze this anatomical measurements and the growth rate analysis. So here we have in this map you can see there is population from so here the population which is towards the northern latitudes, this one is the coldest and driest region, and this the number 2, this is the intermediate one, and the third one, it is the warmest and the wettest region as a whole. But in each region we have 3 different elevations. So we have warmer low elevations, the intermediate ones, and the colder high elevations. So in total we have 3 regions and 3 elevations, totally to 9 populations, and all these are in the western Himalayan part. And here we have covered the elevations from 3200 to 4200 meters. And the sampling was conducted in the same time when they taken it for metabolomic analysis, so it was done the same year. And now coming to the approach we used. So what we did, we collected wooden disc from the main stem of 9 different individuals per population. So in total from 81 individuals. So we estimated the ring width, then we estimated basal area increments, and then plant age from these rings. And we then analyzed how plant age differs among the populations from different climates, and how BAI, this basal area increment, it changes among population, differs among populations, and how it's changed during the last 2 decades. And then we estimated the climate growth relationships across populations. So here we estimated the relationship with monthly temperature, with minimum, maximum, and mean, and then the precipitation and the Palmer drought severity index. So now coming to the results part. So in terms of plant age, what we found that there is mid elevation optima. So here we can see in all these three regions. So this plant age is maximum at the mid elevations and lowest in the lower elevations, and there is, you can see, hub shaped pattern, and this was consistent across all the 3 regions. And in terms of the whole regions, which we call transect also, so it was higher in the northern transect or northern region, which was drier also, and colder also from the other ones. In terms of basal area increments, so what we found that this basal area increment, it is consistently lower in the high elevations, and here the simple reason is that because at high elevations there is temperature limitation, thermal limitation, so due to which plants cannot grow that much. So this explains this. But the pattern along elevation, they are not consistent like age. But in the southern region, there was this hub-shaped pattern. In the intermediate one, there was steep decline. In the northern, there was decline, but not that steep. But in the intermediate, the steep slope can also be explained by the reason that here we had the longest elevational gradient. So we had from 3200 to 4200 meter. In others, it was not this much. It was slightly less, from 34 to 4000 or 200 or 300 meter less than the others. So that can explain why it is much steeper here. And in terms of the whole region, so here again, this basal area increment, it was higher in the northern transect. It was not expected. We were expecting that in the colder and drier, it will be less, but it was against our expectation. And the possible reason is that maybe this species is not liking too much humid conditions. And when we analyze the changes in the last 2 decades, so we interestingly saw that the growth is increasing in all the populations. However, it is increasing in a population specific manner. So here we can see in the population which was in the driest this region, and the lower elevation population, it is increasing at the maximum base. It is again against our expectation. We expected that the higher elevations will show the maximum increase, but this is not the case. And when we analyze the climate growth relationships, so we analyzed by combining all the populations together from each region and also individually. So here I am showing all the population from the northern transect, that is the coldest and the driest one. So here we can see that the minimum temperature, monthly minimum temperature of many months, it is positively correlated. So we can say that minimum temperature is the constraint which is restricting plants to grow more, specifically in this region. And in the intermediate one, here we do not see that many relationships, but the only relationship is with the positive relationship with mean temperature and maximum temperature of previous September. So it can be explained by the reason that maybe when the plants are getting more time to grow in the previous year, so they have more resources to invest in the growth in the next season, because September is the just end of the growing season. So if plants are accumulating more resources there, so maybe they are using it in the next year. So in the southern also, here we can see the minimum temperature or mean and maximum of the growing season. They are playing role in increasing the growth as they are positively correlated. But these results are in line with the many studies which are reporting that with increasing temperature, so plants are showing more and more growth. And this is specifically more evident in the areas where temperature is the limiting factor. And here in this area also, whole area temperature is the limiting factor. So when we analyze for each population, so here I am showing for the northern three populations. So here in the lower elevation, where we saw the most pronounced increase in basin area also. So here we can see the minimum temperature. It is most strongly correlated and for many months. But here we can also see that when there negative relationship with precipitation and palmar drought severity index, which are negatively correlated. So it again suggests that plants do not like when there is too much moisture. And it is even clear in the high elevation where the negative correlation with palmar drought severity index is even more consistent in many months. So it again suggests that the plants are not liking the too high rain plus temperature, but only with the temperature they are showing enhanced growth. In the intermediate one, the relationships are not that very like previously, but here we can see in the lower population at low elevation, there is positive relationship with the precipitation of January. So it can be explained by the reason that when there is more precipitation, which is, will be in the form of snowfall during the January, so it will help in retaining more moisture for longer time during the growth season. So that can be a possible reason. So in the other cases, it is just the relationships which were previously also, for example, here in the high elevation, it is with the maximum temperature of the previous September. In the southern this region populations, so here the important is the relationship, negative relationship with the precipitation, because this southern one is the most moist one. So here we can see that when the precipitation is increasing, so growth is decreasing. So which again suggests that when the populations, they are not liking too much moist conditions. And now coming to the conclusions, so we can say that the lifespan of this rhododendron anthopogon is greater in mid elevation populations, and it is also higher in the colder region. Secondly, growth increased in last 2 decades, but in a population specific manner. Growth increase was pronounced at the lower elevation of northern transect. And in terms of climate growth relationships, the relationships were population specific. Temperature was the major factor across population. and increasing minimum temperature, mostly leading to increased growth. Precipitation also played a role, but the increasing precipitation is not helping this species, but it is decreasing its growth. So the findings of this study are already published, and I would like to thank all the colleagues who helped with this and the funding agency. And thank you very much. And if you have any questions, so I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions, raise your hand. Write a question in the Q&A. So I'm going to start, something that I'm observing from your data is that interesting to me, is that one of the things we worry about for alpine plants is that they're not going to have any room to go up. We sort of assume that their favorite habitat is at the top, and that with climate change, that habitat is going to disappear. But your data suggests that their favorite habitat is the intermediate.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what your data says about the potential for climate change to alter the distribution of these species, of the species?
Yeah, the thing is, this Rhododendron anthopogon, it is not the species which is at the top, very top. So it, because this is in the alpine regions and there is still a space around 400 or 500 meter above this where it can shift. So it can go away from the lower areas where the warming can increase herbivory or some sort of pathogen. But at higher elevation, it has potential to go up. But the thing is, because this species, we found it can live for 90 years also. So when the species are this much long lived, so they are not with habitual of moving too fast. And rhododendrons are itself, they are conservative. So they will be slow in moving. But as the patterns of age suggested that higher elevations, they are not the ones with longest longevity. So maybe populations have moved, but maybe they will struggle. But there is space, at least in the areas where we move, there is space to move. But we do not know how well they will be able to establish there and what other conditions they will need. So Sayantika is trying to address some things. So we are also working with many other things. So maybe we will have answer to some questions in some years.
Yeah, I can see the work you guys are doing together being really important for restoration.
Yeah, maybe I will also thank you. You also provide us some grant where we are looking into the genetic diversity. So maybe that will again help us. So how genetic diversity is driving these metabolic changes, these growth changes, and then the biota associated changes and many other things which will be again built upon the data sets which we are currently working on.
I love this holistic approach, all the dimensions of the plant, the microbes, the climate, that's really cool. I like that a lot. We have another question.
Okay.
All right, from Dylan, wrote in the Q&A. Why do you suspect that increased precipitation had a growth limiting effect on these populations, since that was a contradiction for your hypothesis? It was opposite. So why do you think more precipitation had a growth limiting effect?
Yeah, the thing is, when we can expect that the moisture or the water availability will help the plants, but because this, whenever we have seen this species, so it is normally in the moist habitats. It is never in the very dry conditions. So when it is already occurring in the moist conditions, so that can limit. And the another thing which can happen when there is more and more moisture, there will be more other species which will be more exploitative in their nature. So they can increase competition. There can be more pathogens which are coming. And when it is happening in the sunny environments, so it likes when there is no competition. So it is always the top of the canopy. So when there is more precipitation, there will be more vegetation which will cover, and maybe that will decrease its fitness and we will not see enhanced growth. And another thing which I can imagine, when there will be, because in Himalayas what happens, when there is precipitation, so it will be too much precipitation and the condition can become hypoxic also. So it can be precipitation for 3, 4, 5, or 1 week long. So that can also create some hypoxic conditions that can also limit. But we are not sure about the mechanism how it is going on.
Somebody once called rhododendron the Goldilocks plant, meaning it needs just the right amount of water. Not too much, not too little. That's what you're saying. It needs exactly,
Mhm.
it wants just the right amount of water. And I think that's interesting thinking about Martin's question earlier about growing them in culture. I've
Mhm.
killed several rhododendron anthopogon, and it's watering that's killing. I don't know how much water to give them. They're actually very difficult to figure out because most rhododendrons you can kind of let them dry or you can let them be too it has a very narrow range of happiness in the amount of water. So that's interesting.
Yeah, maybe plant also need some specific biota. Maybe this is requirement of specific biota, and we are just thinking from the plant perspective, but we are never thinking what biota wants, and biota is helping it. But same thing is doing something. We are doing many other things. So maybe we are not trying to grow it here because it is not possible. But when I will move back to India and I will work there, so then we will see why what is the problem.
Yeah. Martin, do you have another comment?
Yeah, you said that you killed several anthopogon. I did the same nearly 10 years ago, but I made the experience if you get them a moderate moisture with good fertilization, and it's a very easy plant. Then they tolerate 30 degrees, 36, no problem. But if you let them dry out, then you get the stress level very high. That was Dennis Bottomiller from Federal Rate told me that you have to keep the stress level always low. So if you don't keep it low, you get all the stress levels for fungus, for insects, and everything. And you have to look for the optimum culture which is close to their natural habitat. And that's very difficult to put it in the culture. Our summers expect, for examples, are very hot and dry with less rain during the last 5 years. And the high alpine plants are getting more easier as the lowland plants. So because like the big leaf rhododendrons, you need high humidity, plenty of water because of their lowland conditions. But the highland species are getting more easier,
Hmm.
and you don't have to water them every day. So I water them every 2 weeks, also during 30 degrees, and they are growing. They make only 5 centimeters per year, but they are growing and survive. So that's what I mean. That you always need a little amount of everything, and the stress level is the main part of everything.
That's good. I'm going to try again. I'm going to try anthopogon again. You guys have
Yeah,
inspired me to try again. Awesome. I
maybe
think we want to move on to our next talk. Thank you.
maybe I will add one comment to
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah, we have the climatic data which is recorded from the sites and to from within the rhododendron anthropogon canopies. So we have from across the gradients. So if you are interested, you can use the data. You can find the optimum soil moisture conditions and optimal temperature condition what you want to grow the rhododendron.
I love that. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we can share the data with you, and you can estimate what will be the optimal conditions.
You know what
Okay.
I'm thinking is when you guys publish the JARS article for your grant, for the rhododendron grant, our people want to know this. This needs to get out to rhododendron enthusiasts. So let's make a plan to share this
So
broadly
you are
in
talking
the
about climatic data or the genetic
just
data?
an estimate of what the perfect watering is.
No, we can share the data without publishing. It is
Yeah,
already we have it. You can use it. There is no problem. We are not going to publish only the data. The climatic data it is already submitted to this soil temp database. It is already there. But if you want, we can share it with you, and you can use it if you want. Yeah.
great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay, so
you.
thank you very much.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go on to we have two keynote speakers